Okay, I'm gonna take two more calls and then I gotta go because y'all, this deadline is approaching. Okay? If you had any idea how hectic and insane this past week has been, I managed to get two features. I got features. I got features on the Hot City album, and they're so amazing. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. It's so. One thing I want to say is, so all of these songs were written 10 years ago, right? And they have just been living, and I opened them and I rewrote a bunch of stuff and whatever. And that's already hard to do. If you're a songwriter, you know it's almost harder to work on old stuff and try to fix it than it is to just start something new. But I wanted to do these songs justice, so I started reworking them. And then when I brought in these two very special people to feature, I got like a fresh perspective where other people were writing on it. And I was like, I've been so lonely. I've been so lonely because these songs were already written with people so long ago that like I don't always see a lot of those people anymore. And so it was just like me by myself, like fixing these songs with David Morb, of course, who's reproducing. But as far as like just reworking lyrics and stuff like that, I was kind of on my own with that. And so it's been really refreshing and exciting to have a new perspective on some of these songs. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. Okay, let me try David again. David, please pick up my call. Hello. Please answer the Hot City hotline. Hi.
I can't believe I was picked. Thank you so much.
Of course, yeah.
Bonnie, I mean, I feel like everyone on this chat could literally talk to you about how they've like followed you on your journey and all have like what's been really actually beautiful watching other people talk is like just like their weird like random connection and like
Mm-hmm.
how you influence them. And mine, I'm gonna say this and then I'm going to ask you a
Okay.
question. Uh, but mine was I had just broken up with someone, and traditionally, we would always go to his family's house for the 4th of July on
Mm-hmm.
the East Coast. And I lived in LA, and I remember it was 4th of July weekend, and I was at the Target in WeHo, and I saw your beautiful hair, and I remember I was in such a sad mood because I was like not. It was like I was broken up, and I went up to you. You were so lovely. We took a photo, and I was just like, I remember like thinking like what a mood switch and what a mood turnaround. And then you are talked about so much in pop culture. And the
Oh,
funny thing is, I often will tell people, you know, I met her, and then they'll say, "What is she like?" And I always say, "She was really nice." And what I remember is that she had Uncrustables in her cart that she was checking out, and it was
my
such and you had so many, and also like I'm not gonna say too much, but we're actually like we were neighbors. I lived in Beechwood Canyon, so I used to
God.
walk
No
around the
way.
reservoir. Yeah, so like, but it was so funny because I was like, yeah, she had a vacuum cleaner and a bunch of Uncrustables and vibes. Like,
Whoa.
who doesn't
I
love?
am dead. Oh my God. Uncrustables. Absolutely. That's me. That's what we live off of on tour. So I probably was buying a shit ton of them for tour or for like a shoot or whatever. Like everybody loves Uncrustables. Oh my God. I cannot. What an amazing detail. That's absolutely true. And I'm so glad that I get to meet you in person. I love that. I
Yes,
love that. That makes me really
thank you.
happy. Thank you.
Um, my question for you is like, obviously we know like your prolificness in songwriting, and from what I've heard from other artists, I know you have spoken much about how like you are really inspired by like you just like will walk through life and you'll see something and you'll write it down in your notebook and you'll be like, I'll come
Mhm.
back to it later. Do you have a preference? Like, would you say that there's a preference for you in like writing first and then creating melodies, or like writing to track? Like, do you have a preference? And that could be a very broad question, but I'm
Yes. No.
just curious, like, what your thoughts are.
Definitely. No, when I started out songwriting when I was 12 or 13 years old or whatever, I sat down at the piano and that's how I started. I would start with chords and I would start with melodies and lyrics, or I would write in my journal and then I would pull from that and put it together. And then when I got into the pop game, it's like 90% of the time I'm walking into the room and there's a producer and they have a track idea, or we'll go through some beats that they already have pre-made. And it took me a long time to learn how to write that way, because I was used to being able to control where the chords were going and everything. And then once I started doing it, it was so freeing, because it's like option anxiety when you can really just write anything in the whole entire world, where you sit down and you're like, oh God, like what do I want to say? How do I want it to sound? And so it kind of like limits things a little bit, where you're like, okay, great. This is the world that we're working in, you know? So it's rare that I have something kind of just come to me out of the blue melodically. And so yeah, I really prefer to write the tracks. Like usually now that I'm like more on the producer side of things too, I'll come in and be like, hey, I want to do something kind of with this vibe. Like I'll have a reference from the 80s or the 70s or whatever. I always try to reference older things so that I don't get sued. But you know, like I'll be inspired by something older. Like for instance, Jenny's Got a Boyfriend was inspired, like the concept was inspired by Jesse's Girl, the song Jesse's Girl. And I always wanted to write a song with a person's name in it. And that was one of the ones on my list where I was just listening to like, Hey Mickey and Billie Jean and Jesse's Girl. And then I was like, oh wait, yeah, I'm having this exact same experience that's Jesse's Girl, but it's from a girl's perspective. So, you know, I do prefer to kind of come in and collaborate with people and have something sort of started, because also you don't always know who you're going to work with, at least in songwriting world. For my own stuff I do, but so you don't really know what somebody's specialty is. But I really like starting with a track and starting with melodies and stuff, and then building around that. I think that's like become my preferred way of working.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I like adding it to like the repertoire of knowledge of when like I speak about you.
Oh,
I could literally ask you so many questions, but I also know that people are on this chat and they want to be picked, and I want to give them the opportunity. So it's lovely to cross paths and like know that like I know I'm not the only one. Like we're like rooting for you so much, and I'm
thank
just
you.
so you are like the definition of like what career in this industry looks like, and like you can't just stop, like you have to. And so like I think that's what makes me just feel so much more connected to you, because there's almost like this ever growing journey of like that's like life, you know, and life in music. And so thank you, Bonnie,
Thank you so
and I
much.
love the song.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You're so sweet, and your words mean a lot to me. And I'm so glad that you have a good report of when we did meet, and that makes me really happy. Thank you
Bye.
so much. Bye. I love you guys. You're the best.